Boker Tov, good morning. This is Piero San Giorgio on Tel Aviv beachfront. One of the places I always enjoyed when I came here in Israel for business is to stay in one of these big hotels and enjoy the beach, enjoy the view, of course the good food, most importantly the friendly people, and I must tell you, very good, beautiful girls here on the beach. Anyways, I love Israeli people. They're really great, and as you know, we may criticize the politics, we may criticize some of the government idea, but fundamentally, I like this place. I like Israel. More importantly, I like the people and the character. Anyways, last video from Israel. As you know, I'm the author of the book Survive the Economic Collapse, which was very successful in France and in French-speaking countries, and now that has come out in English and coming out in other languages. What I wanted to focus the last video, after the few others that I did in Jerusalem, in Masada and other places, is that I just want to focus on what are the strategies for Israelis, for you people, as individuals, as families, to survive. And as I said before, and as I said in conference here, the strategy in Israel is different from elsewhere. Whether you can live in the US, you can live like me in Switzerland, you can live in France, you can live in the UK, Australia, and if you feel the collapse of the global economy and you feel the collapse of the government, well, surviving on your own as a family, or even better, as a small community, is a great strategy. And that's what I explain a lot in my book, how you can survive as an individual or as a community. Now here in Israel, of course, the situation is different. The country is surrounded by lots of other countries which may or may not become aggressive, but certainly over time, if you consider the collapse of the global economy, maybe the collapse of the United States as a global power, certainly the collapse of Europe as a meaningful player, Israel will be completely alone, and it will be very hard to get help from potential new economies such as China, or I think areas and countries that will survive pretty well, like Russia, like the old Soviet Union area, which have probably better chances to withstand as a whole the economic collapse that is coming. So Israel has a tough choice, and as Israelis, or as people who live in Israel, it's very difficult to be preppers and to prepare yourselves just as individuals, because even if you have the best prepared farm, or as I call it in my book, sustainable autonomous base, well, if the country collapses and let's say the surrounding countries invade, and while they may not have great technology to do that, they still have masses of numbers of people, of ground people, soldiers, infantry. Well, eventually you will never be able to defend the farm, or even if you develop nice kibbutz as a concept, against an overwhelming force like that. So that will not work. The only solution here is to have, of course, prepared individuals, of course, prepared communities, but more importantly, as a country who understands the threats, and a country and nation, the Israeli nation, who understands what to do to enable as much as possible of its territory to succeed. So first part I'll tell you about that. I think that some of the issues, some of the problems that need to be solved here are clearly to get as little dependency as possible on all fossil fuels and all energy-related issues that cannot be produced locally. Now here you are very lucky. You have the sun above me, the nice sun of Mediterranean. So you could develop a lot of solar panel industry, but be sure to manufacture solar panels here. Don't outsource manufacturing elsewhere, because one day you will have to manufacture these potentially on your own. So all the industry that goes around producing electricity is to be favored, is to be subsidized if possible, even if I'm a liberal economist in my mind, so I don't like subsidies, but perhaps this is a good time to do that here, and clearly make sure that you have your independence in terms of energy to create electricity, so that you can transform as much public transports as possible to be based on electricity and not on petrol. Because here one of the problems in Israel, as Israelis know, or people who travel here know, is that you have way too much cars and you're way too much reliant on petrol-based transport. Cars, and you have great infrastructure for traveling by car, But the infrastructure for public transport, while it has improved over the last years, it's very small, and it's certainly tiny compared to similar sized countries or cities around Europe. So that is clearly something that you can work on. So that's energy. Of course, water. Water is the most important resource, and here, being in the Middle East, water is always a problem. So clearly you have to make sure that you can, first of all, save water as much as possible, recycle as much as possible, clearly gather water from all sources, especially, of course, rain. If you have a lot of electricity, you can get it from the sea, of course. But most importantly is to use the aquifers and the natural resources from the earth, the fossil water that is stored underwater, as best as possible. And that, of course, leads to a very interesting and political charged topic, which is that most of the water sources come from the mountains, which are Palestine territory, or Golan, which is also an interesting historical topic on that. And the aquifers below the ground are, of course, also in the hills and also by the sea, by the way, under Gaza a lot. So here you will have to have a lot of negotiation, because, by the way, I really think that granting full independence to Palestine, or whatever you call it, but certainly to give them some of the territories that, it's something that will have to be done, and probably water rights is going to be part of the negotiation that you need to set up. Food, as another topic, is fundamental. As a country, you're very close to be autonomous in terms of food production, because you export so much. But again, you have to check, is that food possible with less oil or more expensive oil resources? Is it possible without fossil fuel, without mechanization? Is it possible without so much pesticides and fertilizers? You really have to check that. And why I'm saying that about the country while I'm addressing to individuals, because obviously I don't have contacts with the government, I don't talk to them. However, you do as a citizen of the country. So all of these elements, you clearly need to talk to your local community, to your town, check what Transition Towns is doing in the UK or in the US, and you probably want to do that here in Israel for your own town. I don't know whether you live in Petah Tikva or Ramallah or Herzliya, make that town as independent as possible from fossil fuel, from oil. Make it autonomous in terms of food, make it autonomous in terms of collecting rainwater and filtering it and making sure it works. And finally, I don't need to talk to you about knowledge, because here you still have a huge amount of manufacturing and intellectual capital that is great, one of the best in the world per capita. But certainly for defense, that's my 6th point, you have to also think, how is defending a country like Israel going to be in the future where the global economy collapses? Probably it means that the technological edge that you have had for the last 6 years is not going to be as strong as before, because it will be very hard to fly squadrons of F-15s or modern planes and certainly modern land equipment without fuel. Unless you find fuel, oil in the sea behind us, you have gas fields here, not huge, but some gas fields. It will be hard to make an army so successful as it has been so far. But certainly you can still have a very strong defensive configuration of your army, just as Switzerland, my country, is developing. So that means much more infantry, much more defense works, and possibly a larger part of the defense forces which are static. And static is never a good defense, but you need to have also mobile troops to be able to intervene where it's important. But it's going to be much more difficult as of today, where all of the troops are mobile and all of the technology is so overwhelming. So defense is going to be an interesting topic, and I also encourage people, like we do in Switzerland, and we have a very similar system here where every citizen goes to the army, or almost every citizen in our case as well goes to the army. But for sure, here you can imagine that you have reserve troops, people above a certain age, certainly, who can build defenses over and around towns, so that towns can be defendable, it can be defensive. And I would certainly integrate into those plans people who today are not part of the defense forces of Israel. Maybe you have to think out of the box, and again, that's an idea that I have, but it's open to debate. How about including in the defense plans people who today, Israeli citizens who today are not doing the army, and we know who they are, and we know why they don't, but maybe it's time to discuss with them and say, well, look, we're all in the same boat, and maybe you should also contribute to defend the country, if only as local and defensive troops for defending a town, defending a key spot, and defending resources that are going to be precious and vital. So the approach has to be collective. The approach has to be towards the whole country, and so that you can work to make the whole of Israel a sustainable, autonomous base, and then see how the new global economy, because I think that after a phase of transition, which can be more or less long, eventually there will be a new form of order that gets created. Now, we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know who are going to be the main players, if any. Maybe we come down to a very regionalized and local world, in which case, if you do it well, you can keep some of the prosperity and some of the good life that you have here, and clearly I don't wish anything bad to you guys, so I hope you can make it. So while you prepare yourself as individuals, and again in my book I explain everything you need to do in terms of storage for water, storage of food, learning skills and getting stuff to help you cure illnesses and wounds, but also of course defend yourself, but really put an emphasis here in Israel on the social link, which means get your community interested about preparations, get your town, your area in the town, your village if you live in villages, and talk to your government. Talk to your government about power, about electricity, about energy production, about dependency on oil. This is the time to do it. It is the time to petition for more electricity-based public transport. It is the time to get your dependency of oil reduced to a maximum, because oil is going to be harder and harder to get, and that's just one of the tipping of the iceberg points of the coming transformation, of the coming change of the world in the next decade. So you don't have a lot of time. We all don't have a lot of time. I think in the next 10 years, this massive change and what I call the collapse of the economic system is going to happen. So you have a lot of good assets here in Israel. You are patriots. You are still believing in yourselves. You are tough. What can I say? Toughness is a good thing in this world, and as I always say to people, don't fuck with Israel. And even if people disagree with the politics of the Israeli government regarding, Palestine and all that, still, you are the ones who have to take decisions now, and you have a lot of good cards in your hands, and you can do a lot of good things for yourself if you play them really well. So I only have good wishes for you guys. Shalom, and hopefully I'll be back again another time. Take care.